Ultimately, to achieve greater recognition around Hitsville as a songwriter, Barrett Strong enjoyed a very brief recording career whilst with the company, with some degree of success. Born in West Point, Mississippi on February 5, 1941, he moved to Detroit with the rest of his family when he was aged just 5. He learned to play the piano whilst still a teenager and often accompanied his elder sisters in a family gospel group they put together. One of the regular visitors to the Strong household was R&B singer Jackie Wilson, who had attended school with one of Barrett's 4 sisters. On one occasion Jackie arrived at the house and heard Barrett playing piano and singing, and impressed with his abilities, told him he had a friend in the music business that might be interested in meeting him. That friend turned out to be Berry Gordy, writer of several of Jackie Wilson's hits at the time, who later came by and was equally impressed. That in turn led to a recording contract with the fledgling Tammy label and a hastily arranged recording session in a small basement studio belonging to WJLB DJ Bristol Bryant. Berry, along with Billy Rocal Davis and Gwen Gordy, wrote both sides of Barrett's debut single, Let's Rock, backed with Do the Very Best You Can, which was released in April 1959. Although very few copies were actually pressed and the single did not sell much outside of Detroit. A few months later, Barrett was present when his next single came into being. Berry had recently acquired 2648 West Grand Boulevard, a house that would eventually be converted into a recording studio and offices. But on this particular evening there were just 3 people present in Barrett and songwriter Janie Bradford. Berry had come up with a particular piano riff that he was playing over and over again, encouraging the others to think of suitable lyrics. He said, "Come on. Think of something everybody wants." I said, "Well, money. That's what I want," was Janie's later recollection. "We stood there and just kept writing and throwing out lyrics and improving on the melody, and the whole thing. It just came together. I'm not a spontaneous writer, but money was spontaneous type thing. It was a moment type thing." Barrett Strong was there. He plays piano a little better than Mr. Gordy. So he said, "Well, let me play it for you." Naturally, by him singing it, he just kept singing it as we were writing it, so it went on him. He became the artist. The recording appears to have been almost as spontaneous as the writing, for when money came to be laid down, a white guitarist and bassist walked up to the studio and asked if they could help out. Just walked up and asked if they could be on the session. We said yes, and they played on the session. Never saw them again in life. 2 young kids on their way from high school, Barrett said, although a Eugene Grew did come forward nearly 50 years later and identified himself as the guitarist, also claiming to have worked on subsequent Motown sessions. When Money, That's What I Want, was released, Berry received a flood of orders from retailers in and around Detroit and eventually from further afield. Berry was aware that the record was a hit but that it also stood the chance of burying his still young company, so to remove the threat of overstretching leased the master to his sister Gwen's label Anna. With access to Chess' national distribution system, Money became the first major hit Berry and his labels enjoyed, forging its way to number 2 on the R&B chart and number 23 pop. Whilst Money became a major hit and influence, later attracting a cover version by the Beatles, Barrett's follow-up Yes, No, Maybe So went nowhere, despite also being leased to Anna. By the time Barrett's third single hit the streets, Whirlwind, in August 1960, Motown had put into place its own distribution setup to handle orders from around the country, but Whirlwind didn't receive money from outside of Detroit. Neither too did the next single, issued in February 1961, with Money and Me, a blatant attempt try and cash in on the success of his debut, although too much time had passed between that hit and his latest effort. Barrett's final Tamla outing came in June 1961 with Misery, a single that also failed to generate much action and resulted in a planned album, Money and Other Big Hits, getting pulled off the schedule. He came close to having another hit, however, working on a song with Mickey Stevenson entitled Jamie that was due to be recorded. I wrote it for myself, but I left the company. The track was still there, so Eddie Holland just overdubbed his vocal on it. He did a great job. By him singing it, it was my hit too. Barrett meanwhile left Motown and headed to New York, where he teamed up with legendary writers and producers Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann. I was in New York, hanging around the Brill Building all the time. I would see Elvis Presley and all the guys coming in and out of there. And I ran into Doc Pomus there. I met him there, and then he introduced me to Mort Schumann. They decided to be my managers. They signed me to Atlantic. It proved to be a short-lived relationship, both with management and label, with only 7 sins backed with What Went Wrong appearing on the Atco subsidiary label. From New York, Barrett went to Philadelphia for a while, returned home to Detroit and moved on to Chicago. In the Windy City he signed with VGA Records, which would result in a lone single for the Tolly label, with Make Up Your Mind backed with Better Run appearing in 1964. This also failed to sell, so Barrett gave up his singing career and turned to writing, penning the Dells hit Stay in My Corner with Wade Flemons and Bobby Miller before leaving VJ and turning up at OK Records. His compositions were widely covered. D.D. Sharp recorded It's a Funny Situation on Cameo, Barbara Green did I Should Have Treated You Right on Vivid, The Artistics had This Heart of Mine on Aka, and Mary Wells, Post-Motown, recorded Use Your Head for 29th Century. With his reputation as a writer therefore established, Barrett went back to Hitsville and Motown. They were doing something a little different when I left, but they were doing the more soulful, R&B style stuff, so that I had a place there. So I had an idea I thought I could take back and see if they could do something with it. I had Grapevine. I took it back, and they did something with it. Barrett had known Norman Whitfield from his earlier time at Motown, so teaming up with him seemed like a natural thing. We used to hang around together, parties and things during the school days. When I came back over to the company, he was there, so we just hooked up. Over the course of the next 7 years or so, Barrett helped Norman create some of the company's finest moments, including I Heart It Through the Grapevine. The Something They Did With It resulted in 2 chart-topping smashes for Gladys Knight and the Pips, and then Marvin Gaye, Smiling Faces Sometimes, The Undisputed Truth, War, Edwin Starr, Friendship Train, Gladys Knight and the Pips. Too Busy Thinking About My Baby, Marvin Gaye, as well as a slew of hits on The Temptations, including Cloud 9, I Can't Get Next to You, Runaway Child Running Wild, Just My Imagination, Psychedelic Shack, Papa Was a Rollin' Stone, Ball of Confusion and many more. Along the way Barrett would garner 3 Grammy Award nominations for Best Rhythm and Blues Song, for I Wish It Would Rain, 1969, Smiling Faces Sometimes, 1972, and Papa Was a Rollin' Stone, 1973, finally winning the coveted award on the third occasion. That was also the year Barrett bade his final farewells to Motown, not long after the company had left Detroit for California. Opting to try something different, Barrett looked to revive his own singing career, signing with Epic and later Capitol, where he enjoyed some success with his 1975 album Stronghold, as well as recording for small independent labels. Barrett would eventually settle in Southfield in Michigan, where he established his own Blart label, with Stronghold 2 in 2001 among the releases. I thought it was time to do this again. So I mustered up the energy, and here we are. I miss the energy level we had back in the day. Now it's sort of down. People aren't as focused or true to themselves as we were. It seems to take a little more for them to get motivated. And to me, writers today don't think about how their songs relate to someone else. They think about how it relates to them. That's not what we did. Everyone could relate it to Barrett's songs, resulting in him being inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2004.